Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., all rights reserved.
And now, back to a man who didn't let being named one of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America go to his head.
Woo! Woo! Yes! In your face!
He's Jim Blasingame, the Small Business Advocate.
Welcome back, 34 after the hour. Thank you for staying with me. I'm Jim Blasingame. I'm glad you're here. My pleasure, as always, to continue to be with you. Very excited about our good buddy Mike Muetzel being back on the show. Mike is the author of They're Not Aloof, Just Generation X. He's one of our top generation experts in the Brain Trust. He's helped us understand these young whippersnappers as to the best that we can, us old fogies, and getting together with these whippersnappers in the marketplace to work with them, to buy from them, to sell to them, and to employ them, maybe in some cases to work for them. Mike Muetzel, welcome back to the show.
Hey, good morning, Jim. Great to be here, man.
It's good to have you back, Mike, as always. Hey, Mike, there are a lot of baby boomers out there who are kind of frustrated about the younger generations, and we call some of them Gen X, and we got some that are Gen Y. We call them millennials. We call them the digital natives and all that stuff. It's sometimes I think maybe is it good to have these folks identified in these different segments, or should we just quit using all those titles? What do you think?
Well, that's a pretty interesting debate. I all the time, when I'm out speaking, and I was just got back yesterday from doing a 3 or 4 day deal at George Washington University. And I had these guys tell me, are they really different? I love the Dan Fogelberg on the earlier segment, incidentally. These guys like, hey, nobody was more rebellious than I was. I even went to a Grateful Dead concert. They're just like we were. They're not that much different, but it's significantly different because where our generation kind of conformed, their characteristics remain the same. And these issues of trust and turnover and loyalty issues and engagement. Gen X is now all the way up to their mid-40s, and they still have this separate set of values, especially as it applies to the workplace. I think what's interesting is I think a lot of boomers are coming around to the Gen X way of thinking in terms of not trusting their management group. No, I'm serious. I'm not trusting their management groups, kind of wondering, what is the balance between my work life, which has always been dominant, and what is the, how does that fit in now to my family and social values and things like that?
Very interesting. Well, you've been working with the Gen Xers a lot, and of course the Gen Xers are getting to the age now where they're starting to, they're having to deal with reality a little more, right? I mean, they're becoming managers, they're becoming executives, they're becoming owners, and they're employing some of these young people. I'm curious about whether the Gen Xers are having any issues with the Gen Ys. What do you think?
Actually, the Gen X are having some issues with the Gen Y, but I think one of the really interesting phenomena that we haven't talked about is what happens when a younger person's managing an older person. What happens when you have a 45-year-old who's managing a 60-year-old?
Right.
And I know we're coming up on it, but I'm going to tell you an interesting story. I was working with a huge manufacturing facility down here, and I'd done a lot of work with them, and I went back in in the workshops, I'd met a lot of great young managers. I mean, people that were engaged and had advanced degrees. And make a long story short, I went in for a follow-up visit with a plant manager who was a guy that I'd gone to grad school with like 30 years ago, And he said, hey, I'm having trouble. We just got these 360 evaluations back, and this one manager was getting kind of a bad rap, and I just can't figure it out. And you worked with him. What do you think? And I said, I think the guy's awesome, man. Anyway, I went in and interviewed some of his employees, and I kind of walked around the plant, taking people aside. And it was, most of them knew who I was because I had keynoted their company meetings and stuff. And I asked a guy that was probably 57, 58, I said, tell me what you think about Jim, right? And he goes, oh, I knew that he had badmouthed Jim and hung Jim out to dry and threw him under the bus on these evaluations, you know. I said, tell me about Jim. He goes, oh, Jim's the greatest guy in the world. And I was kind of surprised at his answer, you know, he was the greatest guy in the world. Oh, yeah, he's wonderful. I said, how is he as a manager? He said, he's easy to work for, he's real easy going. The only issue is that when it really hits the fan, he doesn't have a clue. And I said, that's interesting, because this guy's got 2 advanced degrees. He's got a master's, and he's got a master's in technology, a master's in business and a master's in technology. And I said, he doesn't have a clue. I said, that really interests me. Can you give me a specific example of where you think you really fell short? And he goes, yeah, recently we were having trouble with the paint line. There was some pollen from the pine outside getting in our air system, and it was messing up the paint. And the first thing he did was ask us what we should do to fix it. You know? And the Gen Xer was trying to get team engagement with his people, trying to have the answers come from them. And the boomer couldn't handle it because the boomer factory worker was so tuned into the fact that people told him what to do every day. He was conditioned.
Hold on to that thought. We're gonna come back and sort all that out when we come back after these messages, folks. 20 till. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., intended for the private use of our audience. Except as otherwise provided by copyright law, all other copying, redistribution, or publication without prior written consent is prohibited. All rights reserved. Prohibited. All rights reserved. Prohibited.